Okay, why don't we get started? I'm Jackie Bacharach with the South Bay Cities Council of Governments, and we're really delighted that you could all join us this morning. We're hoping for a couple more people. We decided when we got involved in the South Bay Fiber Network that one of the things that we could do is provide informational tech talks to our members to learn what some of the network opportunities are, and today we're learning about some of the hazards. So we will be doing a series of these, and I don't have any kind of a regular, third Thursday or something, but we're going to be scheduling them, and so please watch out for them. If you have ideas of something you would like a tech talk on, please let me know. We're thinking of doing one about Equinix, which is our point of presence for the
Join the meeting
South Bay Fiber Network. So that will be one of them for sure, but we'd love to get your ideas as to things you might have heard that you'd like to know more about that we can do on our network. So today I thought we would start off with Kivu Consulting. We have Keith Swanson and Eddie Walters here, and I got their name from the city of Torrance because Torrance, as you know, has recently been hacked. It was a real mess for the city of Torrance, and they hired Kivu Consulting to help them with getting out of all of this. So we wanted to bring that information and maybe some lessons learned to all of you. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Keith Swanson, who is the one who's sharing his screen right now, and he can tell you what's up there, and we'll move on. Keith, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jackie. So I brought this up because I was going to use the Garmin hack that happened to show just, that even the big giant companies can have problems with ransomware. And then this one popped up that Jack Daniels, the Brown-Forman company that makes pretty much half the booze in the world, they got hacked also. So these giant corporations that spend billions of dollars on information security and billions and millions of dollars on just everything, they're getting impacted by these bad guys. They are becoming more and more and more technical. They're attacking just about everything. So I'm gonna stop that share there, and I'm gonna switch over to my PowerPoint slide here. Trust me, it's not gonna be a death by PowerPoint. So can you guys see my screen? How about now? All right.
Yes, we can see it now.
All right. I'm not going to put it in a full screen. We've all seen PowerPoint enough, so we know how that works. Kivu Consulting was launched in 2019. We focus on cyber insurance incident response, but we also do incident response, managed services, everything. We recently opened a London office in 2019, so we have offices in Europe, Canada, across the globe, really. We provide incident response, post-breach remediation, information protection services. So we've got our fingers into pretty much everything out there to go with cybersecurity. As far as me, I'm a retired detective. I spent 26 years in law enforcement with the Scottsdale Police Department. And when I retired after being in the computer crimes division and doing all of that work, became an incident handler and management of the incident response teams at both CVS and Amex. I do teach digital forensics everywhere. I've also got Eddie Walters on the line here. He is up to his armpits in recovering a bunch of files on some cases that we have. We have a post-breach recovery team, and Eddie is part of that team that actually goes on site and will but they will actually go on site and take care of business for you. So the threat landscape, let's talk about what's going on right now. Well, threat vectors, here's what we've got happening. This is what the bad guys are going to look to do to you, and they are doing it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at the speed of light. So a drive-by attack. They are going to scan your internet space, your public-facing internet space. They are going to go ahead and find any open port or any vulnerability that they have, and they will exploit it. So it's very, very important that you look at your public-facing internet and that you're watching that, scanning that, and trying to outwit them a little bit. Exploit a public-facing application. Well, what happens with a lot of our applications, they get older, they stop being supported, they don't have the right security updates. They know that. WordPress being one of them. WordPress has got some issues, and WordPress is very much used for websites, and it's got a ton of issues. We are seeing a lot of hacks against WordPress right now, so you need to make sure that these things are updated and done. Remote services, like any remote desktop, team viewer, anything like that that they can find, they are going to exploit it. If you have remote desktop protocols open to the public internet, you should close those right now. That is a major source of intrusions right now that we're seeing from a lot of our different malware groups. Major source of intrusions. Hardware additions. Now, you don't get to see this one too much, but I have seen it one time in my career where they went in and they took what's called a Raspberry Pi, which is a little tiny computer, and they put it on the guest network at this company. And this was when I was working for the police department. From the guest network, they were able to pivot through into the full network and had full access to the place. And you know, this company had no idea what was going on. And we showed up, and they had a little like plant in the lobby, and in the base of that plant, covered up by the little moss that they put on those fake plants, was a Raspberry Pi operating on their network that we found. So that's something that happens. It's not as much as the rest. Phishing emails. Oh my God, I don't think I need to talk about that one. We all pretty much have received a phishing email on our personal accounts and on our business accounts. It is unrelenting, and it is a game of numbers. So they want to get, if I send out 10,000 emails, if I get 1% of those that click on it and get infected, I'm going to make some money. And quite frankly, I have a copy of the email programs that they use. It's called Ghost Mailer. And this thing will go out and it will send 10,000 emails a second. So if I say, hey, I'm going to attack kivuconsulting.com email domain, well, it'll send out A at kivuconsulting.com, B at kivuconsulting.com, and every combination of the internet, of the alphabet, and it just runs through these things 10,000 at a time and just pounds the bejesus out of you. So that is one of the things. This next one, replication through removable media. It's the old, let's leave a USB laying around and somebody's like, well, what's on this? I got to plug it in. That one we don't see as much anymore. We used to see that a lot when I was at the police department, but not so much anymore. So, but it's a good idea to shut off your USBs.
Chris Pimentel
joined the meeting.
I love Zoom. It's a good idea to disable your USB ports if you don't need them, okay? Not only for compromises coming in, but insiders going out. Supply chain compromise. These next two kind of go along in conjunction with each other, or a trusted relationship. A vendor, your managed services provider, or a software vendor, or somewhere along that line, somebody that you use gets hit. This is what happened to Target. When Target got hacked, it was their air conditioning vendor. They allowed their air conditioning vendor access from their network into the Target network, and the air conditioning vendor wasn't exactly secure. Boom. And we all saw that on the media. And then the last one is valid accounts. There are so many hacks out there right now. It is amazing, the information. People say, oh, I'm not out there. Yeah, you are. Consider yourself out there. I am. I have been the victim of identity theft. 2 credit cards got opened in the last 2 weeks on my account, and I'm a retired detective. My wife's a retired fraud detective, and we take every precaution known to mankind to try to hide ourselves. So we're out there, and you have to take that as for what it's worth. Between Experian and Home Depot and the DOD, and yeah, I mean, there's so many monstrous hacks that these things have their fingers into each other. You have to assume that your information is out there. So all of these things are what's playing against every one of your networks all at the same time. And that makes it difficult to prepare, and that makes it difficult to work. One of the big ones that hits and really can just tear up a network is ransomware. This is one of the things that we specialize in, is ransomware. And you hear about this all the time, and that's what happened to Jack Daniels and Brown-Forman. They get into your systems. They will recon, sometimes a couple of days, sometimes several weeks, and we've seen them upwards of a month, where they're sitting on your systems and they're watching your emails, they're watching your network traffic, they're poking around, they're saying, hey, wait a minute, this is where all the good stuff is. That stuff over there, we don't mind. Heck, in some cases, the bad guys probably know a little bit more about your network than you do. Once they do that, once they're uh, happy with what they've got, and they can see what they've got going down, they will go ahead and they will distribute the ransomware executable. And then once the executable is distributed across the network, they hit the kill switch and it starts locking up files. Now, there's different types of ransomware. We'll talk about some of the trends and how it works. But basically, they're either going to lock up your critical files or they're going to lock up the entire drive. If they lock up the entire drive, you're going to go in there then you're going to find your machines rebooted, and there'll be a pop-up on the screen saying, contact us at this email address or this Tor address or whatever it might be, and we will give you instructions. And with the other side, you're going to go in there and all of a sudden stuff's not working. Your machine may be powered up or maybe not even functioning, but they're going to take out your financial records. They're going to take out your backups, your archives. They do attack backups. They will go after backups because they know that you'll use those to recover. We'll talk about backup strategies here later on. But basically, their goal is to put all the cards in their deck. They want every piece of leverage against you that they can get. So if they got anything, they will use it. And they're going to export you for every last ounce of money they can. We get called in on these cases at different points in time in there. Sometimes we're right at the beginning, sometimes we're kind of at the beginning, and sometimes we're in the middle. You know, it's vital in these things that you get with some experts, and we'll talk about that also because there's different groups out there that are related to different places. Let's talk about how this stuff works. Like I said, you're going to come in, and it could be anything. It could be in a phishing email. We're seeing a lot of RDP and some vulnerabilities in that. If they find a crack in your defenses, they are going to be all over it, and they will pound that crack. I think it was one of the cases we're working on right now. We saw 44,000 attacks in less than 10 minutes on a vulnerability. Eddie, is that about right? Then that one that we're working on, it was 44,000 something and some change, right?
Which one was it again?
The one with the mess that you got in your hands, the hospital.
Gosh, I don't think IR gave me any stats on that one right there.
It was like 44,000 in a minute, and they're attacking hospitals. They said they weren't going to attack hospitals during COVID, but these are felons. These are criminals. And you know, being a cop all those years, the one thing I can tell you about criminals is they're going to say this and then do that because they don't care. They want money. This stuff is going sideways at the light speed. Once they hit the kill switch and they have this thing distributed, boom, it's a done deal. It takes little time to encrypt. It takes a lot of time to decrypt. Encryption is a method that using very complex mathematical formulas to encrypt the data and turn it basically into gobbledygook. The math on these things, if you saw some of the equations, it will give you a headache. Every time I look at one, I'm like, no. I have nerds that can look at that stuff. They can go do it. What you have to understand is that these guys are individually encrypting these things. There is no one universal decryptor. And to try to break decryption with the complexity of the mathematics that's involved, like 128-bit encryption is very complex. And the Chinese have been trying to break that with a supercomputer for the last 24 years. It hasn't happened yet. So there really is no way to come in and brute force decrypt things. Now, there have been some mistakes where the bad guys have let out some keys and some things like that. But for the most part, those mistakes have been accounted for, and the bad guys have corrected that. So their stuff isn't crackable. Obviously, we look at that. If we can crack it, we'll crack it. If there's a key available, we'll use it. But for the most part, they're not available. And there is no magic wand that can come in and say, decrypt. There's no program that does it. We could go get an IBM Watson computer, which is, I mean, a giant supercomputer, and it's going to take years upon years upon years upon years to do one file. So one of the things that you'll see is you'll see all these different attachments. You'll see all kinds of links into what they call open up a malicious macro or a link to a website. And what those are is they'll call out to what's called command and control or C2 servers. And that's where the bad stuff happens. The initial stuff isn't so much a virus as it is a program or a script that says, hey, call out to this address in Russia or the Ukraine or the Eastern Bloc countries, North Korea, China, wherever it might be, and download this, and then away it goes. So what happens? Well, this stuff is getting very sophisticated. You know, this stuff is stealthy. These guys are coming in under the radar. They're operating with VPNs so that they can hide themselves. Being an ex-detective, the hardest part in the world is I can't get my hands on these guys. I would love to get my hands on these guys and, you know, and put them in jail. But the bottom line is to prove anything beyond a reasonable doubt is extremely difficult. And that they use that to their advantage. Now, their targeted attacks, they may go after, say, hey, listen, we're going to go after governmental agencies, or we're going to go after educational agencies. They'll target different ones and for different reasons. The chat is that they'll go after the governments because of the information and the government is scared of the bad press. When I was working for the city of Scottsdale, bad press was one of the things that they've avoided like the plague. Any bad press, and they were freaking out. So they know that they have that leverage, but what they don't know is, and for the most part, the governments don't want to pay and will not pay. Some do, some don't, but for the most part, the governments do not pay. That said, the business impact on these things is massive. Let's talk about Garmin for a second. When Garmin got locked up with ransomware, you're talking about the GPS infrastructure for how many devices? Millions that were taken down, millions upon millions upon millions. And if you cannot restore that, or you don't have your backups because they got to your backups, you are now dead in the water. Absolutely dead in the water. So you know, there's decisions like that have to be made. That they will pay the ransom, and that is something that is very difficult as a detective to me and to take. But I understand that. I mean, there's been places where had we not been able to get in there and help them and get a reasonable ransom and pay, there would have been 500 to 1,000 people out of a job, and the company would have been dead in the water. So I understand the point. I understand the attack and what they're doing, but it is what it is. The other thing we're seeing right now is ransomware as a service. Yes, you know what? You too can hire your own. You can hire your own attackers. These guys are a pain in the butt. I'm going to be honest with you. In the last 2 weeks, we've had 2 ransomware as a service groups or gangs or whatever we want to call them. We negotiated. We said, okay, this is a reasonable price for the data you have. We need to get this company back up. We paid them. They came back and said, we want more. And we went off on them. We're working on some deals right now. We're trying to figure out how to deal a little bit better with these guys because they are in it for the money. And it is no different than saying, you know, I'm going to go hire the Hells Angels to go out and extort money on the street for me. And that's basically what these guys are doing. It is, as you get away from the original group that created the ransomware, the malware itself, you get less and less technical people doing this stuff, and it takes longer and longer and longer to get through the process, and the quality of the decryption tools are getting worse. We've got one right now that's taken us over a week to get the darn thing from them, but we finally got it, and we're trying to get this company back up and running. Right now, data exfiltration, taking your data is the norm. And depending on the data that you hold, it's very, very crucial that you understand that these guys are going to try to take data from you and extort you. That's how they get the big bucks. I have a cousin that works at Target up in Minneapolis, and I know that just on the technical side, the hard costs at Target were upwards of $94 million. But the brand reputation that Target took a hit on, I don't think anybody could put an accurate number on that. The bad press, the brand hits, and you know, being city governments and governmental agencies, that is just it's a brutal attack on you, and it with the elected officials will freak out. There's no doubt about that. So, to be prepared for that stuff and create your plans to guide yourself around these things. Basically, you're looking at two types of attacks. Random attacks. They're just going to spray and play, man. We're going to go out there. We're going to attack everything and anything we can. We really don't care about much other than getting, a couple $100 or a couple $1,000 per one. These are the ransomware as a service guys. They're a pain in the butt. They are just out there to raise money by volume. The key to internet crime is not to rip off one person for $1 million. It's to rip off 1 million people for $1. I've arrested several individuals over the years for just that. 150,000, 200,000, 300,000 victims, and it was all for $5, $6 a piece. Now the targeted attacks, this is where the big boys get involved. This is where your nation states start getting involved. This is where your terrorism groups start getting involved. That's the guys that are going after Garmin. That's the guys that are going after Jack Daniels. These are the guys that are trying to go in and get the big companies. So basically what's happened is these companies have passed off their little ransomware tools to these, hey, I want to make some money, basically cyber gangs. And they're making their cut off of that. And then they can focus their time on trying to get past all the defenses that these big companies have. And it's happening. It's happening. So I think I probably scared the bejesus out of all you guys pretty well. What do you think? So what do we do? All right. Defense in depth. This is the meat and potatoes of our presentation, and I'm going to be leaning on Eddie on a lot of this stuff too, as the technical guy from there. A lot of us run antivirus. Antivirus is just one tiny little layer in there. I will tell you, Windows ships with Windows Defender. The first thing I do whenever I buy a Windows machine is I take off Defender and I put something that's worth a crap on there. Windows Defender being Windows, that is the stuff that the bad guys will use, and they will design their products to get around Windows Defender. Matter of fact, I have a copy of a piece of malware that automatically shuts off Windows Defender and uninstalls it so the bad guys can do their deed. Eddie, anything on antivirus, like the next generation stuff that you're seeing out there, the what is it, Symantec or any of them pushing under their next gen that looks pretty good?
I honestly, I tend to stay away from some Trend Micro and stuff like that. I'm pretty partial to other brands. So AV in itself is never going to be 100% of the plan. So you do need to have supplements, which brings in the EDR solution, stuff like that, because generally the way AV works, AVs are meant to go after viruses. Viruses are differ from malware, as viruses are intended to destroy, malware is intended to hack. So it's kind of like a whole piece of thing that you can develop. Most of the AVs now are starting to get into the realm of the predicting and behaviors and stuff like that, where EDRs kind of excel in that range. But otherwise, it's still pieces that we have to put together.
Yeah, and Eddie's correct. I mean, by saying defense in depth, each of the stuff that we're talking about here is a layer. An antivirus is only one layer. An EDR, or an endpoint detection and response systems, these are the next generation of defenses that were being used. When I was at American Express, we had a product called CrowdStrike. And when I was at, we had Carbon Black before that. And then at CVS, we had CrowdStrike also. And here at Kiva, we use Sentinel-1. What these products do is they don't look at the file behaviors as, like a virus. Antivirus goes out there and say Norton, Symantec, these guys, they go and they create what's called a file signature of the virus, and they put that in a library. And what antivirus does is it goes through all the files on your computer and it compares it against the virus library. And if one of them matches the virus library, boom, that's a virus, they delete it. What the bad guys have done is they've created what's called polymorphic malware. Polymorphic malware is when they take one of these old viruses, they expand the code by, say, 100 bytes, and then they completely randomize that 100 bytes. By doing that, they changed the file signature, so therefore it does not match up with whatever Symantec has in its virus library. Boom, you get right past AV with a polymorphic malware. I was dealing with a polymorphic malware called URSNIF. I don't know who names these things, but that is just a weird name. And I spent 3 weeks in Milan, Italy, trying to put together an office that had got hit by this thing because they had no idea it was there. This stuff was nasty. Not only did it copy all the files out, but it was copying and sending off all the network traffic to the bad guys, banking transactions, everything. It was a beast. And it took us 3 weeks to find where this thing was and get it down. So that's why you need this endpoint detection and response tools, because those will look at file behavior. And especially like ransomware, it'll go, wait a minute, why is this encrypting that? That shouldn't happen. Boom, isolate that machine, shut down that file. And by looking at behaviors of files, you really get a look at the maliciousness of what's going on. Bad guys like to use built-in Windows executables like command.exe. One of the best arguments I got into when I was at Amex is our vendor for our antivirus was submitting command.exe as malware. And I'm like, it's not malware, you goofball. Command.exe ships with Windows. The malware used command.exe, and here's the real malware. So it will look at that and say, wait a minute, why is Keith Swanson firing up command.exe? Keith is just a financial analyst. He's not a tech guy. He doesn't have permissions to fire up command.exe, isolate his computer. And that's the kind of thing that stops the spread of this malware in its tracks. The key to endpoint detection and response is not just having it, but also monitoring. Security operations centers, I built one at CVS and I built one at Amex. And having guys 24/7, 365, whether it's your own people or whether you sub it out to somebody else, that are watching your network, because this stuff doesn't happen at noon on Monday, okay? This stuff happens at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. And the automatic response only goes so far. So to have somebody watching it to say, wait a minute, that ain't right either, then they can go from there, because there's a lot of suspicious activity that pops up that takes some human eyes to take a look at what's going on. So those two things right there are huge in the defense of a network. We all know about firewalls and all that. We have firewalls in place, that those are great. But once you got to understand is that the bad guys are going to get past that firewall. They do it all the time. Cisco, Palo Alto, FortiGate, these guys all make some really good firewalls, and these guys are all testing against these same firewalls. The bad guys go to the RSA, which is a giant cybersecurity conference. They're at the same conferences that we go to. So they're looking at this all the time. Vulnerability management and patch management. These two things run hand in hand in hand. They're expensive. So you have to be able to go through your network and look for vulnerabilities. You have to be able to scan your network or have your network scanned to find vulnerabilities. In the Experian case, there was a vulnerability in the Apache Struts software. And Experian had patched everything except for one server got missed. Blam, the bad guys were in. And Experian is like one of the holy grails of hacking to get into that place. So these things run in hand. So yeah, you scan it for vulnerabilities, that's great. You closed up all those vulnerabilities, that's great. But then if you don't patch and make sure that all of your tools are getting all the updates that they need, every last piece of software, every operating system, everything needs to be patched. And we see this time and time and time again, where we have end of life server operating systems. We see, what's the oldest one you've seen so far, Eddie? I've seen a server, what was it, 2003?
I've seen XP still.
Yeah, and we're seeing Windows XP, we're seeing Windows 2003. Then when we talk to these organizations that have these old OSs, we find out that, oh, well, we have this legacy software that it can only run on that. Well, you need to start updating that software. And or you either that, or you're going to have to completely air gap that old piece of equipment from the internet, because it's going to get nailed. So when something becomes end of life, it doesn't get any more support from Microsoft or Apple or whoever the software vendor is, and that is a big deal. Yes, it's expensive. Absolutely it is. And being in the governmental sector, getting cash to fix things and get things up to speed is tough. It's absolutely tough. And COVID's not making it any easier. So these two things here alone, the top four right there in regards to setting yourself up a defense in depth, along with your firewalls, you've got a good start on a solid program of defense in depth. The other thing is pen testing. You scan yourself and you go through and you do all this work yourself, but it's always good to go out and hire a bad guy for hire, a red team is what we call them, or a pen tester to see if he can crack your defenses. When I was at Amex, we did what we called a purple team test, which was kind of cool. We had the pen testers come into our office and they were doing their things in the side office. I didn't tell my team that they were coming in, and my guys went, "Rebel, somebody's in," and they went after it like it was a real episode. And we did our thing. We caught them. We chopped their heads off and took care of business. Then the bad guys came in to my office in the SOC and said, "Okay, guys, let me show you what we were doing," so that we could find and we could fine tune all of the things we had to go there. So it is good to be pen tested. I would say at least a couple times a year. If you're going 3, 4, 5 years in between pen tests, that's a little bit too long. You're leaving some things out there. And it's just like, when you write a paper for school, you always hand it off to somebody else to read it, because if I read the same thing I wrote 1,000 times, I'll miss 25 spelling errors. So that's always good there. User training. Working in the government sector, we had cops at the police department that were lucky that they could open up an email. And they had no right in the world to be doing anything on a computer anyways. So, you've got to start training your users, and you've got to be realistic with the training. There's a ton of programs out there, but even just having somebody every now and then, once a month, or you go out there and say, "Hey, listen, there's an email spread going around with this, or there's an email spread going around with that." These are the kind of things to tell your people, "Hey, listen, don't click on stuff. If you get an email from somebody you don't know, don't click on it." If you get an email from the mayor saying, "Hey, I need you to go out and buy 25 Apple gift cards and bring them to my office," don't do it. Is the mayor really going to contact you and ask you to buy 25 Apple gift cards? And this is something that happened at the city of Scottsdale. The lady went out, bought 25 gift cards, and showed up at the mayor's office with them. So it's imperative that we train people, and we look at the end users and take a look at the bottom end user. Who is that person? My wife was a detective for years, and that woman can break an iPhone. She is the most untechnical person in the world. My daughter, is having problems with her computer, and my wife will go over there. She goes, "No, Mom, I'm just waiting for Dad." And so you have to train for that person. Okay, being tech guys, we forget that there's a lot of non-techies out there. And one of the hardest things that we do here at Kiva Consulting for my team is to take and translate nerd talk into normal human talk. Now, Eddie and I can get on here and we could talk forever about this or that in tech terms, and we're just going to make people's eyeballs spin. So we've got to get this down to non-tech terms. So, hey, Eddie, anything on the patch management that Windows put out? What is it, WSUS, that does patch management that Windows has?
Yes, that, or if they've implemented SCCM, which is the big management stuff that Microsoft has.
These things alone, get them set up and get them going, because that is a big deal. And I would say, what, Eddie, probably 80% of the patches that Microsoft puts out are security patches?
With the exception of the Big Tuesday release patches now, but yeah, pretty much they're security updates.
Yeah, it used to be that the hacker stayed away from Mac because Steve Jobs was a hacker, but lately they go after Macs also. They'll go after anything at this point. This is big business. Disaster recovery. All right, this is where we start getting into some fun stuff. Backups. The 3-2-1 rule. Everybody get out a pen and paper and write this down. This is really, really important to recover. If the worst happens, you get hit, These guys get in there and they just destroy your networks. Backups are your best friend. The 3-2-1 rule goes like this. You have 3 copies of your data, 1 in production. You have 1 on backup that's network connected, and you have 1 backup that's out on a cold site someplace that is not network connected. Here's the reason for the 3-2-1 rule. The bad guys will go after your production environment and they'll encrypt all that. Boom. They'll look for network connections. Like I said, they're going to recon your network. They're going to check you out, and they will see that connection to Veeam, or they'll see that connection to Barracuda backups. They'll get into that and they're going to encrypt your backups. Okay. Now your backups are encrypted. Wait a minute. Now what do I do? You are at a point where the bad guy holds all the leverage at that point. If you take and during your backup process, okay, I'm backing up to my cloud base here through an internet connection, and I'm going to back up to this place over here. Once that backup is done, you close that connection. Now you have a pristine backup sitting where the bad guy couldn't get to it. Here's where disaster recovery can sometimes fall apart. You need to test this process. How do I get that cold backup in? How fast can I get it in? And how quickly can I get restored? So having a plan is great, but you need to be able to test that plan and make sure that it works. One of the current cases that Eddie is pulling what's left of his hair out is because the client was using a Veeam backup that the bad guys got into and encrypted. Okay, it happens. Well, they decided to pay the ransom. We got the keys. We decrypted the Veeam backups, and the backups are corrupt. What was it? 60% of the files, if we're lucky, Eddie came back.
On which one?
The Veeam.
Well, I've got 2 Veeam jobs I've been working on. The one Veeam job for the college was 0%. They wiped all the backups. The Veeam job or the hospital was right about, I'd probably say C was giving it some credit. I have literally been going through backups. Veeam, when it gets encrypted, whether it be by malice intent or good intent, tends to not agree with it too. So I have been rebuilding the backup files, pulling the VKs out, and it's been a pretty low ratio on it.
It is absolutely imperative that you test your backup systems and look at the time to recover. How long is it going to take you to recover from your backups? That is really the key. And if you run a test and you find some issues, have the pen tester help you with that. Have him go after your backups and see if he can get to them. But having that cold backup that's offline someplace, ready to go, and how often you back up depends upon your risk and depends upon the data that you are storing. So, how much data you need to be functional. Is it a day it's worth of data you can lose, or weeks worth of data you can lose, or a month's worth of data you can use? That's something that you have to sit down with risk management and talk about. How much can we risk to lose? In some corporations, we had a delay on the backups at CVS of an hour. And that gave us 1 hour to chop the head off of whatever got in there before it started screwing around with our backups. So we were very much watching live time, because CVS could not afford to lose all that data that we had that was running in from all these stores second by second by second, right? So we had to be on the ball, and that's a lot different than say, like my little company doing forensics. You could probably encrypt everything for a month, and that's no big deal because I got backups that'll take care of it. So finally, cyber insurance. This is where we come into play. When a incident occurs and you have cyber insurance, there's a lot of different parts that go into play. What will the insurance cover? Will the insurance cover a breach coach? A breach coach is an attorney who is very much schooled in the notification laws and these cyber breaches. We work with a lot of them, and they're good at what they do. And will help you navigate all this complex legal stuff. And I say legal stuff, being a detective, we call it a technical term. Now, you guys are in Southern Cal, and the California notification laws and breach laws are very complicated. I'm not going to pretend to understand them. I'm not an attorney. I'm just a dumb detective. So I will always say, excuse me, counsel, can you opine on this? Because that's what they're there for. They're very good at that. The cyber insurance count and the cyber breaches will bring in a company like us, like Kivu, or one of our competitors. And we will have technical teams and people who specialize in everything. On my team alone here in the Phoenix metro area, I have 2 retired detectives like myself. I have a network admin, a system admin. I poached a kid off of the IRS doing forensics. And I got a girl that's fresh out of college that is one of the most impressive cyber forensics investigators I've met in a long time. So and then we have our post-breach recovery team with skill sets like Eddie's. Eddie gets into everything. He's got all kinds of things going on, PBXs and rebuilding all these different tools and everything else, and rebuilding firewalls and networks and switches and everything else. So we've got a wide variety of skills that we can bring to bear to help you. You know, trying to keep everybody that I have on staff on your city staff would be difficult, especially in Southern California, because your cost of living is high. You guys all know that, and you'd have to back up a dump truck full of money. It's hard maintaining these guys. When I was at CVS, I had an individual who has 8 different certifications, and every day he had Google and Disney and Apple and these guys knocking on his door wanting to hire him. So CVS backed up a dump truck full of money and dropped it on his desk. So that happens. Number 1, plan ahead, guys. You've got to plan ahead. Have a plan, have it in place, do some tabletop exercises on that plan. Run that plan through everything you can think of. If you guys need help with that, we can do that kind of stuff. There's lots of places that will help do that kind of thing. Plenty. I don't want to sound like a sales pitch. You know, it will help you whether you use us or not. It will help you. You know, what are your legal requirements? That is the key. Getting with these breach coaches, these attorneys are sharp. They understand the legal requirements from that. A general counsel may not have that kind of stuff. Got to look at the data you have. Do you have credit card information? People tell me all the time, oh, we don't store credit card information. Then we look at their system. They've got credit card information. Do you have personally identifiable information, or PII? You have a list of your employees someplace with their addresses and phone numbers and social security numbers? You have PII. HIPAA, do you have health insurance? Are you guys storing at the police department any health tests or any of the, like the gas masks, OSHA has a test for that too. That's HIPAA data. Then you have to ask yourself, do I need to store all of this stuff? Do I really need to? Okay, can I function without it, or can I move that risk to somebody else and let them take that risk? Okay, that is really, really, really key to it all. And then if you're going to store it, there are legal requirements. Under the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, there's legal requirements that state that you have to have reasonable safeguards preventing access, deletion, exfiltration, all this of this data. So there's a lot there that needs to be thought about, and it needs to be run through the process itself. I cannot tell you how important it is to run some tabletop exercises and bring everybody in. Everybody, the police chief, fire chief, well, maybe not the fire chief, against firemen, I'm a cop, but bring everybody in. And I'm too busy for this. No, you're not, because if the 911 system goes down because of one of these things, or your police dispatch system goes down from one of these things, what the hell are you going to do, chief? And I've had this conversation with some chiefs, and it happens. And you've got to have these plans in place. So, all right, you got hit. What do? Get a hold of your cyber insurance people. Number 1, start isolating these systems and stopping the spread. Get a hold of your breach coaches. Will come through, and they will start walking you through the process. It is a process, guys. It is a long grind, depending on the complexity of your network. They'll bring in consultants. Hopefully it's us. That'd be cool. If not, it doesn't matter. You've got to get somebody in there that deals with this stuff, that specializes in this stuff, because it's not something that you can keep guys like my team on staff for. And the minute you get them, I'm going to poach them off of you anyway. So it's just the way it goes. We handle communication with the bad actors. Tell your people, do not contact the bad actors. It starts countdown clocks. We My associate director has gone through the hostage negotiation school at the FBI, and we use some of those tactics on these guys. And we have a mountain of intelligence on these guys and what their deal is and how they're going to talk to you. How far can you push them? How far can you get them down? We have all this information that we use in our negotiations to try to get a reasonable ransom down. We will give you guys assistance with decryption, and we'll test the decryption tools. I have a reverse malware engineer on my staff. The guy is amazing. He's an uber nerd. He's an ultra nerd, but he is sharp. He'll take this stuff apart and he'll make sure that it is just it's not going to hurt you anymore. Then what we'll do is we'll do a forensic investigation and we'll determine the root cause and how it happened. The reason we do that is we give you, hey, here's how this happened, so that you can take and we'll sit down and we'll go through and we'll help you build your defense in depth to make sure that it doesn't happen twice. And that's what we have is some assistance with security controls and prevention of future attacks. I'm not, being an old detective, I got a soft spot for the cities, and I'm always going to sit down with you guys and say, okay, hey man, here's some of the things you need to do. Organizationally as well as technically. There's organizational things that need to be put in place, information security staff. And if you look at PCI, DSS, and some of the SOX requirements and regulations, they do require some, some compliance people on your staff. So there's a lot of things that you have to go into there. And then organizationally, getting staff is tough. We understand that. But you've got to do what you can do to try to get some people in there to focus on this, to get you protected. It can't be a secondary duty for somebody. There's just too much of this stuff going on. Let's talk about paying the ransom. Should you? Well, there's a couple things that come into effect. There is a corporation out there called Evil Corp. It sounds like something from a Disney character. What was it, Phineas and Ferb? But Evil Corp has been connected to the Russian government, and they have been sanctioned, which means we can't pay them ransoms. We know what their Bitcoin wallets are. We know their connections, and we cannot pay them. We don't like to pay Cuba. We won't pay Iran. We won't pay North Korea. We don't like paying China. We won't pay these guys. So there's sanctioned organizations out there that cannot be paid. Now, are there other legal terms and regulatory concerns? Thank God you guys don't have to deal with GDPR in Europe. That thing is a nightmare. But PCI, DSS, SOX data, all these different regulations that may apply to your data, they are very specific in there. Some of the things you can and cannot do. Number 3 is your business factor. Like we were talking about, how long can you survive without your data? These are things that you have to sit down and you have to think about. A police department without its dispatch system, man, that's not fun. A fire department without its dispatch system, oof. Those are critical systems, right? And being a cop, I mean, I get that. I mean, if I don't have my dispatch system, or God forbid, 911 goes down, holy crap, Or then you have to take a look at, well, okay, our finance data, how long can we survive without that? Our payroll data, hey, people not getting paychecks, they're not gonna be happy about that. These are things that have to come into play when you sit down and create the plan, okay? Then we take a look at the technical factors, the speed of restoration. We talked about testing your backups and bringing your backups in, and how fast, if something happens, can you get back up and running? That is something that is really hard. The other thing is you got to talk about the likelihood of the decryption succeeding. So if you're in one of these things, you got to bring in, us or one of our competitors. I'm not going to, this isn't a sales pitch, but you got to bring in somebody who deals with these bad guys. We dealt with a group called Dharma, and Dharma is the ones that has come back on us, twice now in the last 2 weeks looking for more money. And that's something that comes into play. Am I going to pay these guys more money or not? But here's the thing. We also know that Dharma will produce a key that works. They have not done that to us yet. We have other groups that their keys don't work, and we know that. So the intelligence that we have here and that we can bring to bear is huge for any of you guys. It is a big bonus for us to be able to use this stuff so we can make educated decisions based upon what you're dealing with. And the way it works is, we will look at the notes that you guys have, the ransom notes, the file extensions. We will look at everything and anything that you have from the bad guys, and we'll cross-reference it across all of our stuff, and we'll figure out who these guys are. We'll get it going. We can figure out who these guys are and what their deal is. That's a big deal, and it brings a lot to bear. We do not identify ourselves in the negotiation process very often. We pose as you, and we will use every piece of leverage we can. Eddie, you got anything else you wanted to add, buddy? We're getting close to the end here.
Well, for the PBR aspect or the post-breach remediation, I would say the biggest tools that we use when we come out site, documentation of the site, network layout to VLANs and things of that nature, credentials to get us moving to get in there. Because we're going to be, at the end of the day, we're going to be your extra set of hands. Having that and the reference points for us to be able to pick the brains and get the information we need helps expedite things greatly. Working with the PBR side, getting us the priorities of what you need up first, and letting us organizing it and getting it out to help get the forensic portions of it done along with the restoration parts of it done is extremely helpful, and it helps expedite the whole thing as well. Let's see, honestly, communication and the help and everything will make everything go significantly faster.
Yeah, the more that when we get on scene, the more that knowledge that you can impart into Eddie's teams, the better it is, and the more it can help them get through this thing and get you taken care of. I will send this, Jackie, I will send you this slide deck so you can distribute accordingly. But we've got a few minutes for questions. Does anybody have some questions about this stuff?
Okay. There's one comment in the, if there's no questions right away, there's a comment in the chat about the city of Baltimore and the fact that they were uninsured and paid ransom. Did you want to say anything about that?
We did not work the city of Baltimore. I know a little bit about it. It was a giant mess, and they were down forever. And some of the stuff we talked about here, they did not have in place. And they did not have a really good plan. They did not test their plan. I know that much. So there's there was issues there, and that's why they were down as long as they were, and that's why they had to pay a ransom. And I see here we got Kaspersky Malwarebytes. We try to avoid product endorsements, but those products there, Kaspersky is a Russian product, and Malwarebytes is decent, but it's not the end all be all. There is not one tool that will be the silver bullet on these things, and that's really the key to it. You may have a really good antivirus, but without the EDR on top of it, it's only an antivirus. So you got to layer it in a little bit. These guys will sell you stuff and they'll say, hey, this will do this and it does everything. You don't need anything else. That's not true. That's not true. You need to have a defense in depth. You need to have these layers put together. Hopefully that helps.
Okay, if someone else, oh, here's another question in the chat. Any insights into what happened to the city of Torrance and how did the bad guys get in? Do you have any insights into that?
We are not going to talk about the city of Torrance. We cannot divulge any information on that.
Okay, how long has that been going on?
Like I said, I can't talk about it, guys.
Can't talk about it at all?
Nope, okay. Not an ounce. We're not going to.
Unfortunately, they have an ongoing investigation, so we can't divulge into any of it
at all. So as long as that's still going on, we have to stay mum, guys.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, because I sort of inferred that we'd be able to say something about Torrance, but apparently we can't. No, so maybe after it's done, we'll get some people from Torrance to tell us what they've been going through. Any other comments? Unmute yourself and feel free to ask or put something in the chat.
Fire away, guys, fire away.
Jackie, this is Joe Corella. I have a question. Keith, you mentioned GDPR in Europe. There's two fundamental differences between how Europe is treating security and how the United States treats it. GDPR asserts that the ownership of all data is the property of the individual. So if I put my information in, it is mine, and I can direct and select opt-in and out of uses for that data. That's fundamentally not the case in the United States. What do you think the likelihood is of legislation moving forward to implement more privacy considerations where the ownership of the data is less the cities and more the individuals? And I imagine that's a multi-year answer.
Yeah, it's going to be multi-year. As long as companies can profit off of selling your data, and this is a soapbox, so bear with me. As long as companies can profit off of selling and buying data, it's going to be very difficult in the United States to get something like GDPR in where you are more in control of your data from the legislature. And that's just the fact of life. It's going to be quite a while before that happens. I don't know if I'll see it in my lifetime because of the fact that it's of the money that's involved with it. And really, that's what it is, guys. There's money involved with it, and as long as that's there and it's big money, that's going to be a problem here in America. And I don't see that happening very soon at all.
Anything else in the chat, or just unmute yourself?
Yeah, guys, feel free. If you guys want to talk about anything, it doesn't matter. Cybersecurity, all that stuff, forensics. Hey, I saw something cool on CSI. Is this true?
Do you want to stop sharing your screen and maybe we can see everybody better?
Boom. There we go.
Okay, can't see anybody from real, but anybody unmuting yourself? Joe, hi, Joe.
Hey,
Did
Joe.
you have another question? We can't hear you. We're not hearing you, Joe. I don't know why.
Sorry, this is very helpful. I just wanted to say thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Keith. We'll be in touch.
Yeah, hopefully you guys got something out of it. I mean, it's building these programs is difficult.
There's a new question in the chat, and the question in the chat now is, can you provide the law section that requires SSN's PII at rest must be encrypted? You know what? I'm going to make a note. I am going to get a hold of one of our breach coaches that I know in Southern Cal and get that for you. Okay. Like I said, being in California, it's your laws are different. I will say that. I mean, but so that's why I will always go to, and they change so damn fast. I will always defer to counsel. So I will get that for you guys. Great. Well, I hope you weren't all overwhelmed so that you have no questions, but we're really delighted that you joined. I'm going to do another last call. Are there any questions? Okay, well, please ask me any questions you think of later. And I want to thank Keith and Eddie for making yourselves available to us. And we'll follow up with, I can send out the slides, and this also will be on our website, so you can see this again or tell people in your cities that they can watch it again. And, okay? and if you guys got questions or anything like that, you don't have to hire us. If you got a question, just send me an email, say, hey, I'm from the city of so-and-so. Like I said, I got a soft spot for the cities after working at Scottsdale all those years. And, we'll help you out as much as we can or answer any questions we can. And if you guys could please put your fires out over there, because the smoke coming over here to Arizona, we've got enough problem with our own fires, okay? It's you go outside and like, where's all this smoke coming from? It's the deserts are on fire, guys. It's rough right now. Yeah, every place is rough. Okay, thank you all for coming, and have a great day. You guys too. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.